Secretary Radu. Good morning. Would you call the roll, please?
Regent Bartel.
Here.
Regent Bradley. Regent Crane.
Here.
Regent Danae Davis. Regent Drew. Regent Evers.
Here.
Regent Balbo.
Here.
Regent Manydeeds.
Here.
Regent Pointer. Regent Pruitt.
Here.
Regent Shervin.
Here.
Regent Smith.
Here.
Regent Spector.
Here.
Regent Vasquez.
Here.
Regent Walsh. A quorum is present.
Good. Thank you. You have received...
Oh, I'm
Oh.
sorry.
Sorry, Regent Tyler.
Regent Tyler. Thank you.
You're on the list now.
Thank you.
The minutes of the June 9 and June 10, 2011 meetings of the Board of Regents have been distributed to you previous to this meeting. Does anyone have any... Well, first let me get a motion. Does anybody care to make a motion to approve those?
Move.
Moved and seconded. Are there any proposed additions or corrections to what was sent out? If not, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Passed. Good morning. I hope everyone has had a relaxing and rejuvenating Labor Day holiday, and that we're all assembled here with enthusiasm and vigor as we address the issues before us. Before we launch the day's business, it's my pleasure to introduce to the board a new colleague, student regent Catherine Pointer. Katie is a sophomore at UW-Madison, where she is double majoring in political science and economics, and among other things is a knowledgeable and enthusiastic sports fan. And I can say that because I sat next to her at dinner last night and learned all this information.
She is from Green Bay.
She's a graduate of De Pere High School, Judy. De
Yes,
Pere
I'm
High
aware
School.
of that, yes.
And attended UW lacrosse during her freshman year, where she was vice chairman of the college Republicans and was elected to the position of freshman senator on the University Student Senate. She also served on the segregated University Fee Allocation Committee. Katie worked extensively for Senator Ron Johnson's successful campaign for the U.S. Senate in 2010 and spent this past summer in Washington, D.C., working for the Republican National Committee's finance team. She anticipates graduating from UW-Madison in 2014. Katie, do you have any comments you'd like to make?
That sums it up very well. Thank you, President Spector.
You're welcome, and welcome.
Thank you.
Kevin, I think you have some introductions as well.
I do. Thank you, Regent Spector. Morning, everybody. Happy fall. Welcome back. I wanted to take a minute to introduce happily to the board our new chancellor at the system's northernmost campus, UW Superior Chancellor Renee Wachter. Renee is here. They're right here, Renee. Yes. Stand, please. We applaud you. Renee arrived on the campus earlier this summer. She previously served as the founding dean of the School of Business at Truman State University in Missouri, and she's already painted her car Yellow Jacket yellow, I understand, so she's jumped right into the job. So welcome, Chancellor Wachter. Look forward to working with you. And also, please join me in welcoming back Chancellor David Ward, who is also here. David. As I think you all know, he previously served as Chancellor at UW-Madison from 1993 to 2000, and then led the American Council on Education, the umbrella Higher Education Association, National Association in Washington, D.C. for 7 years. And clearly, David is someone who knows this campus from the ground up, and he also understands Wisconsin's culture and traditions. Given his national and global leadership in higher education, Chancellor Ward also brings a fresh perspective and a well-informed view of the higher education landscape, both here and around the country. So we're all already enjoying working with him again. So welcome back, David. It's Ward and Soglin in the city of Madison once again. Those around. I'd also like to introduce Dr. Joan Prince. There you are, Joan. Yeah, hi. Joan is Vice Chancellor of Partnerships and Innovation at UW-Milwaukee. Joan, welcome. This year, Dr. Prince is participating in the ACE Fellows Program, which some of you are familiar with, really the nation's premier higher ed leadership development program for preparing senior leaders to serve American colleges and universities. For her project, Joan will be building on the work of the Association of Governing Boards and her own personal experience of over 20 years of board governance research and practice as she develops a case study of the University of North Carolina system. She'll be examining system and trustee board president partnerships and how these partnerships engage during periods of change. The ultimate goal, she says, is to understand what governance practices have emerged as best practices to support our higher education governing boards, particularly in the midst of political and economic change. So lots of us will be most interested in your work as it moves along, and we look forward to regular updates. Good luck.
Thank you.
Is there a reason she's doing North Carolina instead of Wisconsin?
I don't know. I'll have to ask her that. That's coming. Maybe next. Maybe we're next. With that, I'll turn the floor back over to President Spector.
Along with the welcomes we have given, we have some goodbyes. This meeting marks the final appearance of our unique, I would even say one-of-a-kind colleague, Regent Tom Loftus. Tom has served on the board since 2005. To present our official resolution of appreciation to Regent Loftus, I will ask Judy Crane to take over.
It's quite fun to tell Tom what to do. I am truly honored to offer the resolution of appreciation recognizing the service of Tom Loftus as a member of the University of Wisconsin System Board of Regents. I've been Tom's admirer for a very long time, well before I met him, much less becoming colleagues on this board. I've always greatly respected Tom's record of public service to our state and to our country, his leadership and the principles he has stood for, and been proud to support and vote for him in the past. And it was a genuine thrill when we became fellow regents. Tom's extraordinary efforts and achievements in the public sector will be forever documented in the history of the state of Wisconsin and are referred to in the resolution we are about to affirm. He has had an extraordinary career, which continues. And very importantly to us in these last 6 years, his knowledge and experience in so many important arenas has greatly benefited the work of this board and Wisconsin public higher education. His contributions have been substantial and, yes, as the President has indicated, unique. In truth, this regent is truly irreplaceable. And that fact, I'm confident, would not be contested by anybody here. Most importantly, there has been no greater advocate than Tom Loftus on behalf of our state's highly respected system of the University of Wisconsin Universities, College, and Extension. He knows and articulates this history better than anyone. In fact, he has been an important and essential part of the story of the partnership of our state government and the university system. And there has been no more passionate, effective voice emphasizing the fundamental responsibility of the state of Wisconsin to its citizens to provide a comprehensive system of quality higher education accessible to all. This regent's consistent, persistent, and insistent focus on our students and their voices has been remarkable. All students on all campuses, including our veterans, to whom we have special obligations, which he has reminded us. And how often we have learned from and because of Tom, not only because of what he knows, but because of his leadership in bringing issues and those with expertise to the table. His strong advocacy on the issues of academic freedom is an example. He's responsible for the attention that the Regents gave recently to this important area and its proud history in the state of Wisconsin. He reminded us that we must not forget. Now, when he's on a roll, and that's just about every time he speaks, Tom's eloquence is second to none. I love listening to his carefully articulated rationale. Well, usually I enjoy that. I say usually because sometimes for his colleagues around the table, there can be uncertainty about what is coming when Tom requests the floor. Tom is often very specific, one might say pointed, in his incisive comments about the issue at hand. And then one feels the girding of one's loins as one considers, how will I respond to his totally rational challenge, or counter his persuasive case, or justify my more compromising position? There is, in case you don't wonder about it, a certain stress in this. Tom has kept us on our toes. But what greater compliment could there be? We are not meant to be comfortable in dealing with the issues of importance. And Tom is one who never forgets this or allows us to forget, and all this with good humor and respect for the others. He states his case and moves on. Tom Loftus, we are honored to have served with you. You've strengthened the Board of Regents as no one else could have. We respect your courage in standing for what matters, your sagacious judgment developed from wide experience, your savvy in working with the political process, and your vision and belief in our ability to be a part of bringing a better future for our citizens. We will miss you, including your delightful wit and your talent for going to the core to state the truth. And there's one more thing that I will greatly miss. That delicious, long moment when there is about to be a major debate by the members of this board, and the board president recognizes Regent Loftus to speak, and there is a long, pregnant pause as Tom purses his lips and clears his throat, and we are about to be nailed with we know not what. But we also know that we cannot afford not to listen if we want to find our way to doing what is right. With the loss of Tom Loftus, this is going to be a duller place. I still have the resolution. I haven't read the resolution. I haven't read the resolution.
That was just a preface.
That was a preface. I took advantage of that. Whereas Tom Loftus dedicated 6 years of exceptional service to the University of Wisconsin System Board of Regents from 2005 to 2011. And whereas Tom, who earned degrees from UW-Whitewater and UW-Madison, has had a distinguished career of public service, including service in the Wisconsin legislature from 1977 to 1991, holding the position of Speaker of the Assembly for 8 years, during which time he created and served as chair of the Committee on the Future of the University of Wisconsin System, a subject about which he cares deeply. And whereas Tom has been a strong advocate for students, faculty, staff, and Wisconsin residents through his service on all 3 standing committees, Capital Planning and Budget, Education, and Business Finance and Audit, as well as numerous special committees, including chairing the Regent response to the Legislative Audit Bureau audit on personnel policies and practices, and serving on the Hospital Authority Board. And whereas Tom has helped to identify talented chancellors to lead our institutions to even greater future success through his service on 3 UW Chancellor Selection Committees at UW-La Crosse, UW-Madison and chairing the search at UW-Platteville. And whereas Tom has brought a global perspective, political insight, and diplomatic efficacy to his role as a regent, having served as special advisor to the Director General of the World Health Organization and as the United States ambassador to the Kingdom of Norway, where he was awarded the Grand Cross, the highest order of the Royal Norwegian Order. And whereas Tom never shied from calling on his fellow regents to take a stand on issues of principle, strongly articulating the importance of preserving a high-quality, integrated, statewide system of public higher education, and leading a discussion of the history of academic freedom in the UW system, which was entered into the board's official records to reflect the board's steadfast commitment to academic freedom and its paramount importance within the university system. Therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Regents of the University of Wisconsin System hereby offers thanks and commendation to Tom Loftus for his many life achievements at home and abroad, and for his continual sifting and winnowing that was the essence of his skilled stewardship on behalf of higher education in Wisconsin.
Well, thank you, Judy. That was more than kind and accurate. Well, I want to first state that the very best thing for a person to serve on the Board of Regents is to meet and work with the other regents and the chancellors, the staff. I have learned so much about you and your lives and your dedication, and I have benefited from it greatly. A few observations about the past 6 years on the Board of Regents. Certainly, the regents have two jobs. One is to choose chancellors, the other is to advance the budget. Of course, there are many other important things, but I mean, these are the two items that make the place work. And as Judy mentioned, I was on 3 chancellor selection committees, and very rarely does a candidate pop up as a rock star. Joe Gow said, "I'm a rock star," so we hired him. But how many rock stars? So my feeling on the reflecting on this is that perhaps more regents should be involved on the selection committee. And the other is, looking back, I wish we could have had 2 rounds of interviews with the candidates each time. I found 1 round of interviews tough to make a decision on. When I was in the legislature, I was not a fan of student regents. That's when that was enacted. I mean, I still voted for it. I mean, there are students, and they do vote. But I found the student regents, especially knowing they have a 2-year term, really focus on the needs of the student and talk about tuition. I think this would be completely lost if we didn't have the student regents. And we have really benefited when the student regents have spoken up forcefully about what it is the students have as their priorities. As Judy mentioned, this was a historic board in reaffirming and putting down in the records one more time a commitment to academic freedom. We're all sifters and winnowers now, but I think the importance of our action was that we really explicitly said this is about the system, not just Madison. And of course, the major accomplishment is to make sure that everyone knows that the system is the future of higher education in Wisconsin. And I have to really compliment the leadership of this board during that period when the system was under question. And especially the leadership of Kevin and Chuck, calm and reasoned leadership, coming up with an alternative that was sensible and rational and people could endorse. You know, there are a lot of great leaders out there, but very few of them have an occasion to rise to. So we found in Kevin and Chuck that there was an occasion, and they rose to it. I also compliment Kevin on the return of David Ward. Given the period that we were in and what had just transpired and what the future looked like, the return of David Ward was a wonderful stroke. For those of you who do not know David, you're in for a treat, a wonderful leader. I would only say that as you go forward and you're looking at what the future might be, you might entertain an exercise where you fit the size of the university system to the resources the legislature is willing to provide. There is no real future in the legislature pulling away support and the Board of Regents making it up somehow. Perhaps you should just look at what a system would look like if you had to operate it within the confines of what the legislature has. Finally, thank my wife, Joanne, who filtered all of the ideas that I went through before the Regents meeting. And can you, I mean, the bad ones you didn't get to hear. So imagine you heard the good ones. All right, it's been an honor, my honor to serve with you, and thank you very much, and Godspeed, and on Wisconsin University system. Thank you.
I was going to make some concluding comments about Tom, but there's nothing more to say. Judy, that was over the top. Very, very good. I decided to stand here so everybody can see how tall I actually am. Our retiring Regent Danae Davis is not present, but we expect her shortly this morning. Regent Davis has also reached the end of her term, and we will express our appreciation to her later in the meeting. At a future meeting, we will also have resolutions of appreciation for Stan Davis and Betty Womack, two other of our colleagues who have ended their terms. Stan and Betty were unable to be with us here today, so we'll save those resolutions until later. Stan, as you know, was the technical college representative. He's been replaced by Mark. And Betty and her family, or her husband, have moved to Houston, Texas, where they've retired to their hometown and to be closer to family. So she can't be with us. Before I turn to the real focus of today and some introductory comments relating to that, I do want to report to you briefly that Kevin and I met with Governor Walker yesterday. The governor was, for about 40 minutes, The governor was cordial, well-prepared, very interesting. Kevin briefed him on what we're about, that we're talking about today. I thanked him for his appointment of our new student regents and urged him to follow up with further appointments so we can integrate those into the board committees and otherwise. We had a good discussion, I thought, about the university system in general and what was going to happen going forward. All in all, it was a very worthwhile time, and I hope we get to meet with him as we go forward as well. Turning to today's business. This is, as you know, a one-day meeting. We have a single but very significant topic on our agenda, and that is the changing roles and responsibilities of UW System administration. It clearly merits our focused and in-depth attention. There's no dispute that the changes currently proposed for the UW system constitute its most significant restructuring in the 40 years since the system itself was formed through the merger of the University of Wisconsin and the Wisconsin State Universities back in 1971. Such grand-scale changes do not, in fact, happen overnight, nor are they random. They are the measured product of long-time hopes, current circumstances, and vision. A combination of where we are, where we want to be, and lots of hard work. The unexpectedness of this opportunity does not detract from its potential for true transformation. Some might ask why we are tackling this complex and complicated undertaking at this time. Historians will see clearly that we must because of a rare confluence of challenges and opportunities. The current economic climate has presented us with challenges that cannot be ignored or set aside without compromising the reach and quality of what we do. Those challenges include the continued decline in state funding, coupled with a legislative requirement to make major reductions in system administration. At the same time, the UW system has been given unprecedented new operational flexibilities. These challenging circumstances and new opportunities provide the backdrop and the impetus for many of the changes that are being proposed. We also recognize that the national landscape of higher education is changing and that our system must adapt to it. Sustaining our long-standing tradition of being on the leading edge, we will focus today on a multifaceted proposal from President Riley on two separate but interrelated topics. Let me explain the day's plan. First, we'll hear from Regent Chuck Pruitt, Chair of President Riley's Advisory Committee on the Roles of UW System Administration. President Riley created this advisory committee in May to provide an extensive and in-depth analysis of UW System Administration, as well as recommendations for how it should restructure its operations going forward. At my request, Chuck agreed to chair the committee, contributing his talent, experience-based knowledge, and reputation for excellence to its efforts. I thank him for that leadership, and I applaud Tom Loftus' comments about your leadership at a difficult time. In his presentation, Chuck will address the process and findings of the advisory committee. After Chuck completes his presentation, we'll turn the floor over to President Riley, who will explain his response to the committee's report. After these two uninterrupted presentations, hopefully totaling no more than 45 minutes, we will move to questions, answers, and comments. We will likely hear as well from others who served on the President's Advisory Committee. So, Chuck, why don't you start us off?
Thank you. Gosh, I haven't been up here for a long time. It's sort of nice. Thank you. Thank you, President Spector. I'd like to first of all begin by acknowledging that my role here today is really much more that of a messenger rather than a framer, architect, or creator of the President's Advisory Committee on the Roles of UW System Administration. I was pleased to chair this committee, and I want to thank President Riley for assembling what is a really remarkable group. I think I reported to the Regents in July that this was a most impressive, diverse, and dedicated group of individuals who served with me on this committee. Our members gave up valuable time over the summer months to attend meetings, review materials, and actively participate in the shaping of our final report. It was my genuine pleasure to be associated with them, and I know that every member of the committee cares deeply about the University of Wisconsin system, and I believe our report reflects that shared commitment. I'd like to especially recognize and thank my Regent colleagues who served with me on the committee, Jeff Bartell, Judy Crane, Brett Smith, as well as Regent Emeritus Jay Smith, for their insight, leadership, and resoluteness. I don't know what resoluteness is, but it sounded like a big word that we should use in this purpose. I also wanted to acknowledge the other members of the committee, some of whom are here today, and I'd like them to just stand so you can see, in at least some of the cases, the pale faces that were kept out of the sun this summer so they could help shape the future of the UW system. Can those of you who are here, served on the committee, can you stand and can this board and this group thank them for all they did? Finally, I want to recognize the extraordinary efforts of our staff here. I'm sorry, Michael, that comment wasn't meant for you. I want to recognize the extraordinary effort of our staff here, in particular Jess Lathrop and Bob Jokish from UW System and Terry McTaggart, who served as our facilitator and brought a welcome outside Wisconsin national perspective to our conversation. Let me just review where we started. President Riley charged the committee to provide him with advice on two related goals. The first, a short-term goal, was related to reducing system administration's operating budget by $2.4 million. His second, longer-term goal was to reshape the working relationships between system administration and the UW system institutions. President Riley challenged the committee to give careful and strategic consideration to reshaping system administration in a way that, one, preserves what is necessary and effective, two, sheds what is best done elsewhere or not at all, and three, considers opportunities to better serve core stakeholders, the Board of Regents, UW system institutions, and the people of Wisconsin. The committee really did take a 360-degree look at what system administration is currently doing and what it should be doing in the future. We tried our level best to answer the question that President Spector asked us to consider at our July meeting about UW system, which is what does UW system do, how does it do it, and why does it do it? We heard a lot of voices. We had a lot of spirited discussions. There were disagreements, and some genuine differences of opinion remain. But I think I speak for every member of the committee in saying we reached a level of consensus and agreement on virtually everything that appears in our report. And the result of our work is a report that proposes significant changes and recommends a new model for leadership and administration throughout the UW system. This new model proposes significant changes, but the changes are also accompanied by continuity. Let me start by sharing with you aspects of the model that are familiar to you. This model assumes that the Board of Regents will continue to serve as the governing board for all campuses in the University of Wisconsin system. It further assumes that this board will continue to place a high priority on advancing the growth agenda and inclusive excellence. And the historic roles of the Regents, the President, and system administration for providing leadership and advocacy remain intact. Above all else, the commitment of the University of Wisconsin system to exceptionally high academic standards, to the principles of broad access and affordability, and to the progressive aspirations of the Wisconsin idea is unchanged and unwavering. But now for the change. The advisory committee strongly believes that institutions must be allowed to operate with greater flexibility and responsiveness, to develop innovations that lower costs and raise new revenues, and take advantage of opportunities for growth in the marketplace of education and research. This new model of leadership and administration envisions a system administration that is more focused on its essential task and streamlined in its operations. A decision-making environment in which greater authority, responsibility, and accountability for performance is vested in UW system institutions and their leaders, and those institutions enjoy the flexibility to operate in a more innovative fashion. We believe this new, more decentralized, flexible, and collaborative model can represent a distinct competitive advantage for the state of Wisconsin as it prepares more graduates to perform both as thoughtful citizens and professionals in a knowledge-based economy. These changes will certainly require a substantial delegation of authority, responsibility, and accountability to the UW institutions, and will further empower chancellors, and we think we've got a good group to empower, to lead their universities with less reliance on system administration in academic and operational matters. Prior to developing the recommendations for President Riley, members of the advisory committee identified 5 outcomes they wanted the recommendations to address. Those 5 outcomes are: 1, leadership that is broadly shared with UW institutions, that incorporates advocacy and communication with UW system stakeholders. 2, accountability with a focus on results rather than process. That is shared with institutions and continues to serve Regent, institution, and state needs. 3, decision-making that is more distributed to chancellors and consensus-oriented. 4, governance that is more transparent and participatory. And 5, a culture that values the distinctive missions of the institutions and that emphasizes two-way communication and shared decision-making. The committee's report included 21 recommendations to encourage President Riley to lead a serious long-term shift in the orientation and operation of UW's system. The committee believed this shift of orientation would allow institutions to better serve the needs of the key constituencies, students, their regions, and the state. While the current model has served us well over the years, the challenges we now face will require change on the part of all of us. I hope you've had the opportunity to read the report and the specific recommendations that are included there. I will not take valuable time here going over each of the recommendations individually, but let me briefly discuss the reasoning underlying our recommendations. Several of the advisory committee's recommendations address the distribution of authority, responsibility, and accountability within the UW system. The committee recommended that planning and decision-making responsibility and authority be shifted to the institutions wherever possible, unless there is a paramount need for coordination and consistency, or the result would lead to excessive cost or unnecessary duplication of effort. Other exceptions could include situations in which system administration provides a unique service that can't be replicated at an institution, or in which a Regent policy or other requirements necessitate centralized administration. More specifically, these recommendations ask President Riley to forge ahead with implementing and expanding the Wisconsin IDEA Partnership, seeking greater independence from unnecessary and costly state regulations while shifting more authority and responsibility to UW system institutions. We all know, and we learned anew in our committee, that ours is one of the most heavily regulated university systems in the country. What too few outside this room know is that much of the regulation comes not from UW system or the Board of Regents, but from state mandates. As the UW system and the board commits to encouraging flexible and entrepreneurial universities, we need our partners in state government to continue and accelerate what they began in the last budget and provide additional freedoms to our campuses. Additionally, the committee recommended changes to the academic program approval process in ways that save time, increase flexibility for institutions, and reduce staffing requirements. In general, changes should be made with attention to the differing capacities of the individual UW institutions. The advisory committee also made several recommendations related to streamlining system administration processes and efforts, such as consolidating multiple grant programs, transferring to institutions responsibilities related to leading constituent groups, and some system-wide activities in academic affairs. We also recommended focusing UW system audit staff on audits that are a priority for the Board of Regents. Going forward, system administration should provide leadership and service to UW institutions by emphasizing the following activities: interpreting, training, monitoring, advocating, and consulting, and de-emphasizing its role in day-to-day transactional activities. Efforts to rebalance system administration priorities and staffing should include an emphasis on providing services to UW institutions. The advisory committee also recommended that we, the Board of Regents, and the President set priorities by limiting initiatives that impose new requirements to ensure that our efforts are focused and scarce resources are well deployed. Other recommendations emphasize the distinctive role that institutions play in contributing to the goals of inclusive excellence and the importance of reviewing existing operations to assess needs and priorities, and to enhancing the UW system's capacity to lead, coordinate, and respond to economic development opportunities. The advisory committee made several recommendations focused on the advocacy role of the system administration, Specifically, the committee asked President Riley to explore the potential benefits and drawbacks of establishing institutional-level boards. We recognize the value of these boards for many of our institutions, and we also recognize that one size does not fit all. The committee also recommended taking steps to increase UW System Administration's capacity to advocate for UW institutions and for higher education in Wisconsin. Finally, the committee included recommendations that system administration work toward greater transparency regarding budgeting, allocating of resources, and financial matters, and that it further engage chancellors in developing and implementing policies. In searching for the right balance between centralization and a distributive model of authority and responsibility, the committee was convinced that certain functions under the leadership of the Board of Regents remain critical for Wisconsin's future and the future of higher education in our state. These include, one, advocating for strong and continued state investment in the UW system and support for overriding higher education goals such as the growth agenda and inclusive excellence. Two, ensuring effective transfer of students within the UW system and between the UW system and other higher education sectors. Three, ensuring and incentivizing collaboration between institutions. Four, ensuring accountability to the people of Wisconsin by measuring progress on student retention, graduation, and access for Wisconsin residents. And finally, setting tuition rates that ensure access to a high-quality education for Wisconsin residents. These functions continue, in our judgment, to be important priorities for the system and the Board of Regents. Finally, the Advisory Committee also recommended this is very much a work in progress. And so we offered ideas for implementing its recommendations, some of which involved the Board of Regents very directly. The committee suggested that at least twice a year, our meeting agenda include an opportunity for chancellors, provosts, and chief business officers to share progress, successes, and setbacks related to reshaping the roles of system administration. We may also want to consider other ways to secure ongoing feedback and suggestions for change from these and other individuals. The committee also recommended that President Riley ask his staff to initiate a review of all operational policies and procedures within system administration, looking for opportunities to delegate responsibility to the institutions. In closing, I just want to stress that the committee strongly believes that the University of Wisconsin system needs to continue to look internally and reshape how it operates in order to meet the growth agenda goals of increasing the number of highly prepared college graduates, growing more well-paying jobs, and growing stronger communities, while at the same time managing in an environment of increasingly tight state resources. We must allow institutions to operate with greater flexibility and responsiveness, to develop innovations that lower costs and raise new revenues, and to take advantage of opportunities for growth. Our hope is that the recommendations of the Advisory Committee have offered at least a first step toward moving us forward to better serve and educate the citizens of Wisconsin. That's our story. We're sticking to it, and we're going to I will now turn it over to President Riley for his response. Kevin?
Thank you. Thank you, Regent Pruitt. As I said in my written response, I really want to thank you for all the work that you did, Chuck, in leading this group, and to your fellow members who served with you on the committee. Thank you for your hard work and leadership. I should tell everybody that I was on the phone when Regent Spector invited Regent Pruitt to chair this committee, and after a pretty tumultuous year as president of the board, and there was a notable gulp that was heard over the phone lines when he considered it, but after just one gulp, he said yes right away. So I admire that. You have in your hands a response from me to the report of the committee that Chuck just described that is longer than the report itself. So nobody can say that we did not take the report seriously. I'll pause for a second. So to go back to the cliche that a crisis is a terrible thing to waste, we decided not to waste this crisis. I think anybody would agree that a cut of 25% any organization's budget constitutes a crisis. What I asked our colleagues on the committee to do was to think about the exercise they were going through, not just as a budget cut exercise or a position reduction exercise, but as an opportunity to reshape the UW system administration and its relationship with the institutions for the 21st century. We all know that the UW system is one of the nation's most respected and admired systems of higher education. We know that our institutions are increasingly essential building blocks for a stronger Wisconsin economically, culturally, internationally. The work of this committee, I think, has now given us a guide to the best way for this cherished system to evolve and how to encourage that evolution in ways that will have us be more effective, more efficient, more nimble, more innovative, more entrepreneurial. In short, they did just what I asked them to do. I included in my response an excerpt from a draft report from the National Center for Higher Education Management Systems. This is a well-respected, independent corporation out in Colorado that studies and works with public systems around the country. In this about-to-be-published report, that organization asserts that systems of higher education, quote, are increasingly being asked to shift their focus from the management of institutions to the connection of public higher education to the needs of the state, unquote. In Wisconsin, that shift manifested itself in the 2011-13 biennial state budget. With support from the legislature and from the governor, the final budget bill incorporated many themes and statutory changes endorsed by this board as components of the Wisconsin Idea Partnership. And it's worth noting that the advisory committee wants us to keep pushing forward with that framework. With a number of operational flexibilities in areas like budgeting and financial management and personnel systems, we must now take full advantage of these newfound freedoms and reshape the relationship between UW system administration and the UW institutions. I identified several big strategic changes in my response, including new ways to involve more fully our 14 UW chancellors in helping to develop system-wide policies. Embracing this move toward delegated leadership, UW system administration is implementing a new management philosophy, which Regent Pruitt mentioned, calling for more consultation and more local control. In many areas, we are finding ways at system administration to stop doing things we have been doing while pushing the authority and responsibility out to the institutions. We need to trust others to take on those responsibilities, and we must hold them accountable for the final outcomes. In one notable area, I recommended that we reallocate and reinvest after the 25% cut to the UW system administration budget. Without going through the entire list, let me touch on three big areas where I recommended such shifts. In each of these areas, there are direct implications, I think, for the board to keep in mind for its work. First, in academic program review, I've recommended that we restructure the process of reviewing and approving new undergraduate and graduate degrees with the goal of driving down the length of the process to no more than 4 months, so that UW institutions can be more responsive to the demands for new degree programs. In recommending this, I acknowledge that the faculty experts who design these degree programs are in the best position to evaluate the curriculum for academic quality and rigor. With additional oversight from their deans and their provosts and their chancellors and the many outside accrediting agencies that accredit these programs, we'll have plenty of qualified people focused on academic excellence. At the UW system level, I think we should use our limited resources to help you, our governing board, assure that we are avoiding unnecessary duplication in degree programs, or on the other hand, gaping holes or absences in our program arrays. So the way I look at this, the academic program review process has two main parts. One has been review for academic quality, the other has been the program array review. I'm suggesting that at the system level, we stop doing the review for academic quality, because I think we can argue pretty persuasively that that gets done very effectively already elsewhere, and that we refocus on the vital issue of ensuring that there is not wasteful duplication. There is some necessary duplication. Not all duplication is wasteful or unnecessary. But we need to ensure, I think, at this level that there is no wasteful duplication, and at the same time that we're not missing the opportunity to offer some degree programs for which there's a real demand out there in Wisconsin. So that's one major shift from the way we've been doing business. Secondly, in operations review and audit, I'm recommending shifting. I recommended that we focus UW Systems auditing resources on work that relates to the enforcement of board policies and audits that help you uphold your fiduciary responsibilities as trustees. With this emphasis on compliance, we can delegate, I think, to the UW institutions more local responsibility for programmatic reviews, audits and formal reviews that focus more on subjective areas of best practices in educational administration, facilities, management, student services, etc. One of the comments I've heard over time about the programmatic audits that we've done at the system level is that too often they've been kind of at the 30,000-foot level, too high very often for the chancellors, too generic for them to translate those audits into meaningful positive changes on their campuses. Each of the campuses does have local audit staff, and I'm suggesting that they take on the main responsibility for programmatic audits while the fiduciary and compliance audits continue to be done at system administration. And let me add a quick caveat by saying, obviously, if at some point you believe, we believe there is a program on a given campus or a set of programs on a number of campuses that need to be looked at by our audit staff, we can certainly decide to do that at any time. The third large area I'll mention has to do with economic development. UW System's colleges and universities and the extension network across the state offer a tremendously wide and deep variety of programs in this area, programs to enhance the business and economic climate of Wisconsin. These range from small business development centers to entrepreneurial boot camps to support for faculty and staff who bring their intellectual property to market. They also include county economic development agents in extension, customized contract training, high-quality undergraduate and graduate degree programs in business, and industry partnerships that focus both on research and on talent development. And I could go on and on about our work in the economic development area. I do believe these efforts, however, have not been organized and coordinated strategically enough in partnership with local and state governments and with the corporate sector. Both the recent Be Bold Wisconsin report and the UW Systems Research to Jobs Task Force recommended a more targeted approach to the UW's investment in economic development. Based on these and other recommendations, I initiated conversations with the chief executive of the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, WEDC. This is the agency formerly known as PRINCE, formerly known as the Commerce Department. Paul Jaden is the CEO of the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, and he and I have talked about establishing a position in UW System Administration to coordinate with his new state entity to ensure that all UW System economic development initiatives and offerings produce maximum return on investment for future of the state. And I'm very happy to tell you that Mr. Jaden has graciously agreed with me to co-fund that position. We had talked about this months ago with the chancellors who were supportive of the idea. Then when the cuts started to come our way, we put a hold on that search till we saw how things could shake out, and it was at that point that I went to Paul and said, might we find a way to co-fund this position under straitened circumstances for the system administration, and right away he responded that he would like to do that. President Dan Clancy of the Wisconsin Technical College System is also enthusiastic about working with us on this new mandate to bring the full strength of all of Wisconsin's public higher education institutions to bear together with the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation on creating a more competitive Wisconsin. So, after we reduce UW System Administration's GPR budget by 25%, I pledge with the Regent's blessing, I hope, to reallocate some of the remaining resources to co-fund this kind of leadership position in economic development. Recognizing that this area of the UW System's mission is vital to the prospects of our children and grandchildren, we will help ensure that university and state partners are pushing in unison the boundaries of Wisconsin's competitive energy. As the advisory committee acknowledged, this is the beginning of a long-term change process. Moving forward with these changes will require the Regents and the UW system to refocus our priorities, asking chancellors and many colleagues across the 15 UW institutions to do the same. We'll need to review position descriptions and individual goals to ensure that people are focused on the right things. We'll need to continue the process of sifting and winnowing our own policies to ensure that they align with our desire to leverage the new state flexibilities fully and distribute leadership responsibilities widely. These are just some of the important steps we are taking on the path toward long-term transformational change in the UW system. Along with these big changes, we have one near-term deadline to meet, which was established in Wisconsin Act 32, the biennial budget bill, to cut nearly $2.5 million from UW System's GPR budget. We have developed that budget reduction plan, which is included as attachment 2 in your materials with my response, which now must be submitted to the Joint Committee on Finance and to the DOA Secretary by September 15th. Under this plan, most of the savings come from the elimination of 51 UW System administrative staff positions, which we were also required to do. The law requires us to cut a quarter of our GPR budget at System Administration and to eliminate 51 positions at System Administration. I think it was 51.17 to be exact. And remember, when we do that with those positions, that includes both the salary savings and related fringe benefit savings associated with some of these vacant positions. Anticipating that these cuts were coming, we tried to be prudent over the last year or so in our hiring decisions. Equally important, we felt, was trying to treat our employees and potential employees fairly. So we put off filling a number of vacancies intentionally over the past year or so in the system administration. And I know a lot of the chancellors have done that on their campuses. Today, thanks to that advanced planning, we are able to use vacant positions to achieve much of our savings, leaving 8 positions with people in them to be cut. Some of these eliminated positions relate to the big reorganization at UW System that I mentioned, including our major restructuring in the academic affairs area. Others reflect a general slimming down of the administrative functions that we perform here in Madison and the support we provide to our own UW System staff. Together, they add up to that mandated 25% cut to System Administration's GPR budget. I should note here that these savings cannot be achieved without some risk, as a leaner UW System Administration staff continues to lead and to serve universities and colleges that are now enrolling record numbers of students. Our institutions are implementing budget cuts and staffing reductions of their own. I'll remind you that while the system administration is taking a 25% cut, the campuses are taking about an 11% cut, each of them in their own terms. So they're doing that, and we're all working together to make significant contributions to Wisconsin's economic growth at the same time. Cutting such a significant portion, the 25% in the case of system, of any organization's budget dictates that it forgoes some activities, using the remaining resources to focus on higher priorities. In doing so, the organization should try to minimize the liability resulting from those reductions. I believe the strategy presented here and in the attached budget reduction plan do just that. As we push forward with these new ideas, revised priorities, and reduced budgets, we'll need to be very conscious of what things are worth holding on to. I'm thinking here of UW System's growth agenda for Wisconsin, our shared vision for a more prosperous state driven by well-prepared college graduates and job-creating research. Done correctly, the transformation of UW System Administration and the delegation of authority to the institutions can strengthen our ability to realize that bold vision. One thing that will not change is our commitment to accountability. As they say, if it's worth doing, it's worth measuring. With that truism in mind, I will ask chancellors to report back to me by June 1st of 2012 on how the new flexibilities from the state and changes at UW System Administration are affecting their local operations. Where further flexibilities may be needed, and as President Pruitt indicated, we will continue to work with our state partners to try to achieve additional flexibilities that we ask for in the Wisconsin Idea Partnership, and we'll have that ongoing conversations with the chancellors leading up to that report on June 1st, 2012. And I'll also ask them to report back then on how UW System Administration might help achieve, fully implement the flexibilities they have and achieve the new ones that we continue to need. I should tell you that I've spoken with the Secretary of DOA, with the co-chairs of Joint Finance. Those are the 3 people and 3 offices to whom you, the Regents, owe this report by September 15th. I spoke, in addition, we have spoken to the leadership of the higher ed committees in the legislature. As President Spector indicated, we spoke to the governor yesterday about this plan. All of those people were very enthusiastic about what we were proposing based on a pretty thorough verbal summary that I gave to all of them. So that was the reception, at least initially, has been positive, and I'm very happy with that. A concluding thought, I think the challenges of our time call on us to be as transformative and as forward-looking as were the founders of the UW system in their time. If the role of a public university in Wisconsin was important then, 40 years ago, it is even more important now, when nations will rise or fall based in no small part on how successfully they acquire, organize, employ, and distribute information and the higher orders of knowledge and understanding. Thanks to the hard work of UW System Administration staff and their counterparts at UW institutions who serve students and taxpayers so well over 4 decades, we have a university system in Wisconsin second to none. My dear Regents, I propose we now outfit their wonderful legacy for the 21st century by championing the reforms that Regent Pruitt and I have just described. So with that, President Spector, I'll turn it back over to you.
Kevin, thanks to you and to Chuck for your report. And in addition to the excellent substance, I note you finished in 32 minutes instead of 45. So that's terrific. I'd like to give you a quick, in addition to welcoming Danae, good morning. I'd like to give a quick overview of how we will proceed in reverse order. Our end game is to vote on 2 resolutions, suggested versions of which are in your folders. We will work toward that conclusion by focusing first on 2 primary issues. 1, academic affairs, with an emphasis on a major overhaul in the process of reviewing and approving new degree offerings. And second, a more general statement of the major new roles and responsibilities for UW chancellors. I suggest we take them one at a time. After those discussions, we'll move on to all other questions, answers, and/or comments. In each instance, I respectfully ask that your questions or comments be no more than 2 minutes in length and that we avoid duplication where possible. If I conclude that a particular question or comment is not relevant to the specific topic at hand, I promise to return to it at an appropriate time. Our discussions will continue well into the afternoon, as you've seen from reviewing the agenda. So, we're prepared to take initial comments, questions, whatever. I don't know, Chuck, if members of the committee might want to, other members of the Regents on the committee or others want to start out, or chancellors, or anybody else? Chancellors? Anybody who was on the committee would like to comment? Rick?
Sure. 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
That's my comment. Just generally, it was a great experience, and there's a lot of great dialogue, and we really appreciate all the work of the Regents and Chuck for leading the committee. One thing I did want to have an opportunity to say, we're really interested in what you all think, so I'm not going to go on in any detail at all, is that I think it's very important to reaffirm how our institutions, the UW system and our colleges, have the lowest amount of administrative overhead in the nation to start with. As I always tell people, at least give us credit for being the skinniest fat people in America. So having to cut further out of our system administration staff was no easy task. And to do it thoughtfully first with kind of a frame, a structural frame, a cultural frame for change, I think was the absolute smart way to do this. And I also want to finally say that I deeply appreciate, as I know many of our colleagues throughout the UW system, our UW system administration colleagues. They're just outstanding. They work their butts off. They've done a great job. We all have to do things differently, but I really appreciate what they do for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. I'd especially welcome comments on the academic affairs issues. Judy.
I, too, was a member of the advisory committee and felt very privileged to do that and appreciated Chuck's leadership, Kevin's leadership, and the work of the committee. The committee was great, and I think we all learned from each other and did some very difficult work, and appreciated the staffing as well. I do want to comment on first of all, I would say I am part of the consensus that this was the report and that we gave to Kevin to consider. It was difficult, and in the area of academic affairs, I've, especially because of my background on this board, had real tensions about that. And I think that while I support the direction that we're going, I think that the fact that you mentioned the word risk is also something to take into consideration, and to keep that in consideration as we move ahead, because things can and must be adapted as we go along, and I think we need to understand that. I also think that the impression can be that there may be an impression that that the academic affairs area of the university system was especially hit, I guess. And I think that that it's important to recognize that the work that has been done in academic affairs has been extremely important to the strength of this system and to the campuses. There have to be changes now. I think that this is widely understood, and that this is causing pain for various people, and also concern about things that people were doing well and that have been important. And so while I do support the direction that we're going, I think we need to do that. I think we need to make sure that what we lose, that we need to figure out how to do better. And some of that has to do with not with quality, not because that doesn't logically and appropriately lie with the campuses, but because of the interchange among campuses in strengthening quality, I think is really important. That isn't going to be quite as easy to do, it seems to me, with this change. So it's going to have to be more intentional in order to be of benefit to everyone.
Jeff. Thank you, Judy. I hope I'm not being redundant, but I want to say just a reflection as a committee member participating in these deliberations. Number one, that the committee was terrific. The choice of members was wonderful. We had representatives from throughout the system at all levels, and they all had very valuable viewpoints that were considered. Secondly, I just want to say what may be obvious to everyone, that this report is not window dressing. I mean, this report suggests a sea change in attitudes, in relationships, in authority, even in culture of this system. And it's very important to recognize that. This isn't just a reaction to a cut in budget, but it is a major change in the way the system operates. And the third comment I would make is that I'm very impressed with President Riley's response. It clearly reflects what I would regard as an enthusiastic acceptance of the recommendations, not what you might expect from an administration whose authority, whose grasp on control of the system is being suggested to be limited. It is, I think, an enthusiastic acceptance and a promise to move that continually forward in the days and years ahead. Even in some cases going beyond and thinking through beyond what the committee had suggested. The committee report includes a very important what we sometimes refer to as a business model, but it's really a decision-making system for pushing down the flexibilities to the institution level, and that is, you'll find it on page 14 of the report. It's basically, and Chuck mentioned it in his remarks. There are four factors in determining whether the authority should be pushed down, and it has to do with system-wide visioning or priority, coordination and consistency, excessive cost or unnecessary duplication, unique service provided at the system level that can't be duplicated, and the necessity to implement a policy, a region policy, state or federal regulations. This is a test that can be applied in every area of management and administration, and will, I think, lead us in the future as to how this report will be implemented.
Jeff, I know Kevin wants to comment. Before you do, anything specific on the academic progress?
I don't have anything specific on that.
I was just thinking in response to Regent Bartel's remarks about control of the quote from Mario Andretti, which I think I read Chancellor Levin Stankiewicz has on a plaque in his office. And to paraphrase Brian, Andretti said, if you think you're in control, you're driving too slow.
Serving on this committee and talking with Regents as we've gone through this, I've had one question, many questions, but one that keeps coming back, and I'll ask it first, raise it, and it'd be interested in Kevin's or anybody else's thoughts, but it has to do with how our jobs will be different. Our role as Regents will be different as these changes take place. How will, at basic level, how would our meeting, how are our meetings going to be different? What different decisions are we going to be asked to make than we have in the last, for me, 7 years, and for those of us who've been here shorter or longer. But so I'm trying to get that out. Let me ask that on your thoughts, Kevin, or anybody else, on academic affairs. And I want to ask the same question as we go through here, because I think it's been a pretty standard, as I've talked with the other Regents, that's been a common question. Let's just put it that way.
Well, I can take a shot, and then others I hope will join in. I think given that, as both Chuck and I said, we're embarking on a long-term transformational cultural change, we don't have all the answers to that question. That this will become apparent as we move forward under the new paradigm. Some things that we're doing right away will, I hope, have some beneficial changes, and I think they already have started to, where we have our weekly call with you and the president of the board to talk about region meeting planning. For instance, we now have chancellors involved in that call, so they're helping to shape right from the start how you see the issues that the board will be taking up, and we'll continue that in a whole variety of instances. We now have 3 chancellors who sit on my cabinet, and they're there in our weekly meetings. That's new, and they help us to, again, from the ground up or upstream, as the report recommended, shape the nature and the substance of the issues we bring to you. So while that might not be entirely obvious to the Regents, at least at first, I hope that it means that the issues that come will have been more thought out, more input from the chancellors earlier on, better articulated then by the time they get to the board, and will help you make better decisions that will play out in turn on the other side of the decision more efficiently and effectively at the colleges and universities in the system. One way that, for instance, a practical way, going back to academic program review, that I see this changing in the short term, how the Regents operate. You'd be spending obviously less time looking at the insides of the curriculum of degree proposals for quality issues, and I hope we'll be able to spend more time on some of the broader policy issues that we need to have your advice on. And again, I think this board really is a policy-setting board, and the more attention you can give to helping to craft, with advice from the chancellors and system administration, good policies, that's probably a better use of the board's time than looking as minutely as the board sometimes has at degree proposals. So those are just a couple thoughts, and with very much in mind the notion that this will play out over time, and you will have to adjust over time as we go forward with these changes based on how you feel they are rolling out at any point in time on any issue. But let me ask if colleagues want to join in on this.
Let me make one comment before Rick does. I think the most likely effect from my experience on the committee is the education committee's agenda will be somewhat less. from what I remember, a fair amount of time was spent on questions of degrees, degree programs, lengthy write-ups on why. That would be one practical effect, right?
But some of those write-ups, even so, were write-ups about the need for those programs, why they should be part of the program array. And those cases will need to continue to be made, and the Education Committee will need to continue to look at them in detail, I think.
I'm sorry I interrupted you. You wanted to call anybody else?
Rick and then Jose?
Rick.
Was that?
I think it's a really great question, and I'll answer it from the perspective of the university campus. If you look at this model, as Regent Bartel is saying, it really is flipping the locus of focus at the university, college, or UW Extension is now the locus of focus, not the system central at Madison, which made sense 40 years ago. We go back to the points about trying to help with budget and so on and so forth, that's an important thing in picking chancellors, as Regent Loftus was saying. When you only had pretty much two major revenue streams, exception Madison had a lot of research funds even then, that made sense to have the locus of focus, so to speak, at Madison. Now the idea is to shift that. So how does that, back to your question, in my opinion, how does that change your role? In the very creative and innovative things that all of our campuses are doing and embarking on, we'd like to be able to call on you more to help give us advice, not just the Regents, but our UW system central colleagues on how to think through very innovative, transformative things that we're trying to do on the campus. Let's take the relationship. We're now focused on strategic financial planning. Now, budget's just a plan to expend what you have. Strategic financial planning is looking out and trying to figure out how we can diversify the revenue, still keep pressure on the state and the feds to keep funding, try to keep the tuition and fee increases as low as possible, but identify other ways of generating revenue. Right. So on our campus, we use our foundation board and our council advisors, particularly our foundation board, a lot to think through very creative, innovative things that we think will help us strategically set ourselves up for the future. So we would like to feel that we could call on, a lot of you have tremendous expertise in one area or another, to help us think through these things, to minimize risk. You're going to have to take risk. If you expect us to be more innovative and creative and entrepreneurial, then we need to do that. And so that's another way of thinking about how that changes. So now the focus, again, is that each campus has different ideas on how to do that, but we need help and advice from Regents. So that's the way I would see it, answering that question.
Mike?
I think this is a great start, and I think it was mentioned that this is an evolutionary process. I'd like to just throw out a thought and a structure, to maybe be considered down the road. But we can have universities and colleges without a system. We can't have a system without universities and colleges. So the weighting in my mind of the leadership falls to the universities and the colleges under the guidance of the president of the system and with the support of the services provided by the system. So although I know you've made some great steps in how you're establishing your governance, I don't think we've gone far enough. That it's the chancellors, and again under the guidance of the president, that should have the most input in how this system runs, because we don't have a system without them. I maybe just state it's kind of obvious, and I apologize for that, a philosophy that I had in our business, and that was that we had leadership from all our subsidiaries, if you want to relate it to that, and that was our decision-making body. I always reserved the one-vote rule in this democracy, but their goal and their mission was to never let me exercise. And I think we're in a similar situation here, but maybe we haven't gone far enough to put the responsibility and the authority with the universities, with the subsidiary levels.
Let's use your comments, Mike, and come back maybe with more detail as a transition to the role of the chancellors, which is our second question. Are there any comments in particular about the role of the chancellors as recommended by Kevin, or following up on Mike's remark, whether it should be more, less, concerns? Anybody want to comment on that? Jose?
I'm not sure it's exactly in the manner that you've asked the question, but I would like to follow up a little bit on what Mike is saying, and I know that there's going to be a tremendous amount of detail that has to be worked out, but from a governing board perspective, it might tie back to the chancellors. I think we need to ensure that the role of this governing body does not get to a point where it is perceived as simply rubber stamping or the Johnny-come-lately approving body after the fact. And by the time we get to make a decision, so many things have been put into motion that our ability to affect anything would cause tremendous stress on the system, because a lot of things have happened, and then by the time it gets to us, the expectation is simply approve it because we've got so much that has happened. And so the caution that I would ask is that I think a system like this, which I am in support of it, where there is the sharing, even more so the governance, is that there be even more communication with the governing body, not necessarily seeking at every particular point in time approval or whatever, but that we not be placed in a situation where by the time we're about to make a decision, that it really is either too late to really make a significant decision because, again, things have been allowed to move so far, or it just becomes, again, more of a rubber stamp situation. So as it pertains to the chancellors, I think it's really, and Kevin, I do welcome that opportunity. The chancellors are going to have more interaction with us as the governing body. That's the only caution that I can think of right now, is the role of the board. I'm very comfortable with what I'm hearing about the chancellors and all these advisory committees and lots of other things that are here. It's just preserving the true governance role and accountability of this governing body that I think we need to preserve. If we don't do that, then I think it will eventually invite the question of, if all the decisions are really made at the campus, if everything is done, and by the time it comes to the Board of Regents, there really isn't any real governing or authority that's exercised, why do we need the board? Let's just have 13 Board of Governors out there. They're already doing it anyway. And so that would be my only caution.
Anybody else? Who wants to?
Mike, are you going to give an opportunity for other members of the committee to address us?
Sure. I was hoping that we would just take these two questions first and then open it up to anything anybody wants to say. I just wanted to make... Joe.
Could have brought it to you.
That's okay.
You're walking better.
5 weeks, yeah.
You're walking better.
On the academic program review question, that was the one, and the other thing that I don't know that comes through is the chancellors, we had very extensive input into all these discussions, not only through our representatives on the committee, but we've just talked a lot about it, and Kevin has encouraged us to do that and to be very candid about what we'd like to see. Academic program review, it's one of the most important things that is done at a university, and while programs don't sometimes make headlines, that's something that our faculty in particular take very, very seriously, and we have quite rigorous structures in place on campus so that before a program is ever even brought outside of the university, it's been thoroughly vetted, and also our academic affairs areas. So there's a lot of people in the room actually who are really heavily involved in that work already. And then when you add in the accrediting agencies, both for specific disciplines and our regional accreditor, the Higher Learning Commission of the North Central Association, there's just a lot being done on program quality. And when I heard about this idea, I thought it was a very good idea. And I think what it gives you in terms of benefits as Regents,
now you have the freedom and time to get in. Are there areas you would like to explore with us about academics on our campuses? I think right now there may be a tendency to just be so caught up in, well, we need to do this, this, and this, that you never really get that ability to ask bigger questions, and we would be delighted to answer those for you, because we're very proud of our programs. They really are the heart of what we do. So that seemed like, when it came to what is something that maybe the system doesn't need to do so much of anymore, was very logical, and I don't think anybody in our group, and I don't presume to speak for everybody, had any objection to that at all, to saying let's do a little less of that. So,
Joe, while you're there, any comments on the role of the chancellors in this?
well, I happen to be very privileged to be one of the 3 chancellors who are now participating in the cabinet, and the others are Renee and Rick. And I'm sure they would agree. This is a very... I thought, okay, well, another meeting, and I'm going to listen in by phone. And Kevin said it goes from 8:30 a.m. till 11, or perhaps the limits of human endurance. So that's... but it has really been... I think we've done about 3 of them so far. Wonderful in terms of just hearing what people in the cabinet are thinking, and they've been very gracious in soliciting our input, and I feel like we've really been heard in those conversations, and I believe the plan is we'll do this for a year, and then others will rotate through, so everybody will get an opportunity. But I think that's a very powerful idea that is one of those, didn't cost anything, and is quite welcome. And as we move forward with initiatives, we'll be in on the ground floor, so to speak. Not that we haven't been, but truly there. And I'll just finish by saying, we just opened the year, and you saw in the clip sheet perhaps we have 2 wonderful new buildings, and enrollment is way up, and we've been able to add some positions through our differential tuition, and all of those things would not happen without this teamwork that we have with the board, the system administration, and the campuses. And it was really wonderful to see David and his colleagues and Brent with us, for those big days. And so I think things are going quite well, and applaud Kevin and Chuck's committee. There was this mandate to make some cuts, and they're pretty big cuts, and so let's take that opportunity to think about what we do and what we can do better. And this plan seems to be quite sensible, and I think impressive in how expeditiously it was put together under a deadline pressure. So
great. Thank you very much. David.
We were talking a little bit about a role for the board. One role is the national and global context. Higher education policy, and what we're talking about today is a generic issue. Wherever you go in Europe, with the developments there, when you think of what went on in Oregon, Maryland, Georgia, this debate is not just Wisconsin. Both the fiscal challenge and how to organize highly differentiated institutions within a state is a common problem. So I think you could raise the level to the policy discussion by the comparison with what's going on elsewhere. When you think internationally, what is it that the United States and Wisconsin bring that's really different and creating stress elsewhere and not for us? It would be, of course, the overbearing role of ministries of education as distinct from governing boards between state governments and universities. So if we think we have a problem of the heavy hand of government, remember, wherever else you may go, the heavy hand of government is central, bureaucratic, and usually one size fits all. And institutions are fighting that in many respects, but they're fighting not a governing board, but a ministry. I think that the other big difference is how, because I think we're more loosely managed, the differentiation of our institutions, so we can be excellent in a niche, not everybody identical in doing the same thing, has developed really radically in the last 2 decades. I think when this system was performed, I think one of my colleagues said most of us were based on tuition and on general purpose revenues with a little bit of extra support. Obviously, the most extreme distortion of that model is Madison, but every one of my colleagues in different ways has a unique constellation of revenues, and their success is the way they fit into their mission. Now that creates a different problem. Instead of a standardized pattern of dealing with very similar institutions, we have developed this highly differentiated structure, and each of the institutions have peer groups that are quite different, and they're relating to those different but also similar institutions. The challenge of a system is not that everybody is the same. We do that through our peer groups, the Big Ten for UW-Madison. There's a lot of commonality. But higher education works when it's very differentiated, when different kinds of institutions know how to connect. And inter-institutional collaboration with difference is something that we've not been very good at. Here is a case where I think systems can really foster and be the patron of inter-institutional collaboration. Student transfer, which must work if the system's differentiated and institutions different. And we've got over half our students having credits at more than one institution. Someone has to be facilitating that. Individual institutions do not do transfer well. Inter-institutional collaboration makes that work. So I would say by raising the policy level up, recognizing all the various mission niches that we have, recognizing they're already getting a lot of peer feedback, you can bring to bear, in a sense, nuances of the mission, not of the program, but of the orchestral way in which those programs fit together to develop a niche that's competitive. And so I do think we are moving in that direction. Whatever may have happened in the spring, it seems to me, has created a dialogue. This dialogue here is intense because I think the dialogue of the spring here was politically so tight, if you like. But going on elsewhere, as I was certainly my days at ACE, all systems are thinking about how to create a more federated, more federal, a more campus-structured situation. But in becoming institutionally focused, there is still a need for coordination. Whether it's a system or something else, there will always be that need, and we need to figure out how to nuance that as well as nuance the mission. That's where we are, and I think it's not just Wisconsin that's doing this. We may, in fact, have an opportunity to lead because it's not very easy to do.
Thanks, David. Why don't we, you've indulged my approach. Let's just throw it open to general comments. Mike, let's go back to you.
Well, and just want to make another comment on our role as a Board of Regents. I don't see us relinquishing our responsibilities. I see us going about it a different way, and in a way that doesn't take as much oversight because of the successes that are at the system level and at the university level and at the college and extension level. So over the years, we've looked at academic affairs and said, wow, you're doing a great job, and we've seen all these successes, and it's consistent throughout our entire organization. So as a board, we say, well, we can give less oversight to this, and we can move on to other things, but it's still our responsibility. But our experience tells us that we don't have to be as involved in it as we may have been in the past. If something changes, obviously we can change that approach. We have I think the ultimate change in that we hire. So I don't see us relinquishing anything except to say, you're doing such a good job of this, we really can't help you much more. We can help you much more by doing less.
And that wasn't the intention of your earlier remarks to relinquish that. No. Tony.
Yeah, thank you. And I applaud the work of all the people involved. And I'm also happy to know that we understand that it will evolve over time. I just have to say, just from my experience in the K-12 arena, and I know it's different, so I don't want to generalize it, but we need to go into this with our eyes wide open. I've witnessed in my arena of work is that decentralization can lead to bad results and inconsistent quality, duplication of services, and so on. And I understand that there's still mechanisms in place that would prevent those things from happening, but I'll use an example of our largest school district in Milwaukee. The decentralization in Milwaukee Public Schools did not work, and it didn't work for the kids, it didn't work for the adults working in the system. So my only admonition is to do this with our eyes wide open.
Okay. David.
You know, we all come at
analyzing things from different perceptions and coming from certain givens or things that mean more to us. And there were a lot of lessons in the last 8 months for all of us, starting in January. And the lesson for me was that the state of Wisconsin said that the system is important, that moving forward we want to do it as a system, and that the Rice Lake Foundry worker built the buildings in various institutions through state funds, the taxes, and that we're all one. But the challenge was, how do you make the system better? How do you make it responsive? And I think we all learned a lot of lessons, and we don't have to go back on why they happened, but what we learned. And I look at this report, and what really pleases me, and it's a little bit of what Jeff said and a little bit what Mike, is that it was a report dealing with cuts initially, but in fact what it is a change, a significant change. And I think these are bold moves. The academic program review, I think, is really a question of trust, and we're recognizing that trust, that we trust others to do some of that work. Likewise with the chancellor's roles. But I hope we can recognize that it isn't all about where's the money. It's about making some sea changes or culture changes. That said, I've been on this board as long as anyone, and having served as president, I remember so quickly that how things change, that different challenges come to us, different dynamics, different problems. Right now it's an economic problem. At one time it was a free speech problem. At another time it was just the nits and gnats of bad management. But my point is that we need to understand that we need a system that is still centralized and not balkanized. I appreciate the analogy to the subsidiaries, but at the end of the day, it's really what the state of Wisconsin told us, is that the system is important, and that's access to an high-quality educational system. To have high quality, we need money, and access, we need to always have it open. But for me, I have to add one other thought, and that is that the staff at the system has been remarkable. One of the reasons we have a world-class system isn't, well, there are two reasons in my view. It's accountable, it is efficient. Under any metrics, it has been cost-effective, and with some irony, it's being told to cut those costs. But it's also provided information to all of the state of Wisconsin. I mean, certainly as regents we ask some questions, but the aggregating of data and the analyzing of data and the reporting of data and the transparency of our system that allows anybody in the system, in the state, at the legislature to ask questions is really important. And we must maintain that ability, because we're going to have other problems and challenges facing us. And I personally would just like to say thanks to the staff for all that they've done. They've been kind of beaten around a bit, and, you know, in a sense they're on name, but the fact of the matter is they have shared the responsibility for the mission of access and high quality, and they've done it with a great commitment, and I appreciate it, and I hope we keep our eye on that ball, because we're always going to need them as the challenges change.
Well, I know you speak for yourself, but you certainly speak for me, and I'm sure all the others too, with our appreciation for all that has been done over the years to make the system what it is. Ed.
Thank you. On a different note, certainly we're appointed to these positions, but our duties are laid out in the statutes. And I support the proposals. But my question is, are the statutes that govern our actions broad enough to cover these proposals, or does there have to be some changes made? Is there a conflict with any of the statutes? I remember months and months ago when this first came up, the staff had the proposals with some statutory changes suggested. What's the status of that?
I'd like to comment, Ed, that your question reflects how important it is to have lawyers on a board.
The first time anyone said that. After the last.
There we go.
That's better than the last chair would never said that.
Sea change is...
Sea change is not. That's right.
The germane deeds, I'll say a word about that and maybe ask Tom Stafford to comment. Some of the statutory changes that were necessary for us to get some of the flexibilities we asked for have indeed been made in the state budget, in the budget bill, so that's great. Others may need to be made as we evolve and go forward and seek further flexibilities from the state. We did ask Tom Stafford to take a look at whether anything we were proposing here needed an immediate statutory change to get done, and I don't think it does, but let me ask Tom to...
I think in my response would be that this is kind of a high-level plan, and there are a lot of things in here that are proposed that won't require statutory change. Some of them require regional policy change or other changes. And then there are others, depending on how this plays out, that probably will require statutory change. But since we're sort of at a high level at this point without any a lot of detail, that's something we're going to have to keep an eye on going ahead.
I would think you'd have to keep a lot of eyes on that issue. Right. I mean, if I'm given a duty or a responsibility under the statute, there's no change or authority to change that duty, I think that's a problem for me. So I know that you'll keep an eye on it.
And I know the committee asked that question too, Chuck, and tried to make sure that nothing we were immediately proposing, for instance, in the short-term budget reduction, would violate any statute.
Before I go back to Jose, I want to see if anybody else wants to say something who hasn't spoken. Troy.
I think right now there's a concern from student perspective on these changes and maybe the impact they'll have on relationship with the UW system, the student group's relationship with the UW system as a whole. And I'm wondering if you could speak on the potential impact that these changes may have to student groups and shared governance.
Yeah, it's a good question. Thank you, Troy. And Interim Senior Vice President Mark Nook may want to comment on this, too, because he's the person who sort of organizes those governance meetings. I'm a big believer in the importance and effectiveness of the elected shared governance people, both faculty and staff and students, meeting with us in system administration. I think back to law, the way the statutes are written in Chapter 36 really require that we have that kind of relationship with shared governance leaders. And when David Ward was mentioning issues like transfer, for instance, that's something that we do talk a little bit about with the shared governance leaders on and off. And there are a host of those kinds of cross-institutional, system-wide issues that each of the governance groups needs and wants to deal with their chancellors first, but then with us at the system level. So I don't at all see this weakening the relationship with the students. I can understand their concern, but I think that's an area where we, as long as we're consulting with the chancellors adequately, letting them know how those conversations are going with the students and how the students are involved, I think that's an area where we very much want to keep what I think is kind of a model practice as I look around the country for the kind of strong role that student governance has had working at the local campuses, but at the system level as well.
Anybody else? Now, Jose.
A few days back, I received a phone call from an individual that had been contacted about the governance task force committee. What's happening there? What do we know? And how will all of this work interact or interface with whatever that group may be ultimately accomplishing?
Well, a couple things there. And first of all, it really is a legislative task force, Regent Vasquez. The legislature put it in the budget. The governor didn't sign off on it.
The person mentioning he had been contacted by a legislator.
Right. So and the legislature will be appointing the great majority of people who serve on it. I think what we know is the only official appointment so far is Representative Doyle from up in the Cross area, who Brent knows. We know that legislative offices have been talking to others, reaching out, getting both suggestions and talking to people about whether or not they might like to serve on it. There have been no other appointments, and so the group hasn't met. There is some interest because the hour is kind of getting late now that they haven't started, week into September, and the due date for the report is January 1. Given the legislative calendar and the short time between now and January 1, there is, I think, a growing feeling among some legislators that maybe they should push back the due date for the report, and that's their call. We now have working groups formed up on each of the 6 areas that the task force will work on, and with a chancellor co-chairing each of those. So we will, working with you when the task force gets going, hopefully have a good base of information that we can provide to the task force. And I think one of the things we're conscious of is not wanting task force members to, going back to your early comments about the Regents, to feel like we're delivering them a finished product that they need to rubber stamp, but rather that we're there to help work with them to get to some good recommendations and outcomes. The law requires that we, the system administration, staff that task force along with the Legislative Fiscal Bureau and DOA. So we'll need to work with those other 2 agencies as the task force gets up and running. So if any of my colleagues know more about that or know I left something out, jump in, but I think that's about what we know about it at this point. Anybody? Okay.
All right. I welcome further comments, questions before we talk about resolutions. Anybody else?
There may be somebody there are members of the committee in the room.
Sure, they're welcome to speak. If they want anybody from the committee want to speak, welcome to do it.
Maybe, I might ask, there are a couple of provosts on the committee, and since we have talked a lot about the academic review part of it, the provosts continue individually on their campuses and as a group to preside over academic program development and review. Maybe one of them would want to comment on the discussion about that. Pat or Bev, anybody?
Well, I think the provosts have had a lot of discussion about the changes related to academic affairs, and I think to echo some of the comments made earlier, the academic program review process is something that we all take extremely seriously on our campuses. And so again, and I think as President Riley had indicated, you have oversight at various levels related to that. So the changes that are noted related to academic program review, I think these are issues that we've been talking about as a group from the provost, and again, I think there is, we would take these, would welcome these changes, take them very seriously on all of our campuses.
Mark?
I had sort of a unique experience of serving both as a provost and as the interim senior vice president for academic affairs while on this committee, so my role sort of switched. One of the things, speaking as a provost, or as I was the provost at that time, we had a provost retreat before the meeting where we really talked about the changes to academic affairs. And all the provosts got an opportunity to really, in a day, do, if not a deep dive, at least a medium shallow dive into the issues and the workings of academic affairs and system administration, but especially the program review process. It was really unique to see how the provosts came together and realized that, we spend a lot of time on our campus, a great deal of time vetting program development proposals. It's not an easy process on a campus, getting a department to develop this, get it through their approval process, in some cases through a college-level approval process, and then on to a university-wide faculty senate approval process, and then still being approved by the deans and the provosts, the administrative leaders. And at the same time, then working through the processes that we have here at the system level. Many of our campuses saw what was sort of the system policy of an entitlement being granted this role of go ahead and plan. So the entitlement to plan is all about getting permission to go ahead, spend the resources in planning. And then taking some time to do that planning and bring back report. In the 4 years that I served at Stevens Point, any time that we brought an entitlement to the table, we already had the other process done. we were pushing it together to try to save some time because it was going to take so long to get everything through. It was also the case that the entitlement process asked so many questions that you pretty much had to have the program in place, know what you were going to do before you could go much further. And so there was a general feeling amongst the provosts that we had an academic process where we're watching quality so closely on our campuses, and we have outside oversight through, in many cases, departmental accrediting bodies, and in every case, accreditation of the university through the HLC. And so it made some sense to look especially at academic program planning as a place where we were sort of stacking things on top of each other without gaining anything at the institution level or at the department level. So it was pretty easy for us to make that recommendation. The other recommendations that are in here for academic affairs with the grants and the distribution of some of the programs that system oversees were also roundly supported by the provost as a way, in particular, moving some of these advisory groups out to the campuses as a way for individual campuses to develop a level of expertise, as a way to hang a marker out there that this is an area where we have a special program, that we are unique, and to build further uniquenesses for some of our universities and our colleges as well. So there was these academic changes were roundly supported by the provost. I think the other reason that this report may have focused more on academic affairs than on other things is that many of the changes that this system and colleagues at the universities and colleges were looking for were granted in the flexibilities. So the flexibility for budgets, the flexibilities to operate some of our institutions and some of the capital planning things, those came to us. Those were things that had to come through legislative change. The academic affairs changes are ours. Those are things we can control. Those are things that we can make a difference about. And so I think that became easy to focus on those, and it became necessary to focus on those because those are in our control.
And I'd add a subtext maybe that's here that we should add up into the text of this is that we have heard consistent and I think often justified criticism that the process takes too long. And in the process taking too long, we are losing out on opportunities to get degree programs out to students who want and need them, and sometimes ceding that ground to other higher ed institutions who are going to charge the students a lot more for those same programs. So I think that's another consistent plaint from the colleges and universities that we were reacting to and trying to think how can we restructure that process in a way that, again, really doesn't lose the academic quality because good people are doing this seriously at a whole variety of levels at the institution in the accrediting bodies, but at the same time lets us move high-quality academic programs out to the people of Wisconsin more quickly.
Thank you. I would like to move to comments, which we'll see how many there are on the budget reduction proposal, and we can vote on both these things at once. That's all right? Anybody with any comments? And if you're, especially if you are concerned about the budget reduction proposal. Ed?
Yes, I'm reading this concern about reductions in inclusive excellence, losing positions that may be reminding the system of the desire to include people and to see that they're successful and graduate. And that's a concern of mine.
All right.
I know that the campuses are working and have done great things, but I found myself in my business that if I'm not reminded of something by somebody, I may tend to forget that. It's being an important issue that I should be considering, so I'm just expressing my concern about that.
Well, I know Kevin and the staff have given a lot of thought to that, so Kevin, why don't you?
Sure. Let me again say a few words, and then perhaps Mark Nook or Vicki Washington or colleagues from the institutions would like to respond to. I share your concern, and I think one of the things that the committee asserted and that I've reasserted here is that we're not stopping or losing sight of or losing commitment to inclusive excellence as our framework that sort of gathers up the work we're doing across the campuses and says, as a reminder, this is really important to the state of Wisconsin, to the future of all our kids and grandkids. At the same time, as in a lot of these areas, we're trying to pull the resources we have that relate to diversity, inclusive excellence, together in a way that makes them more strategically directed toward the goals that we have. A couple of years ago, I invited a number of people to be on a President's Diversity Council, and actually Regent Davis has served on that. Michael Morgan served on it when he was the DOA secretary. Others, Corey Nettles chaired it. Very helpful. And one of the persistent questions people in that group asked is, well, you've got all these programs, what do you know about which ones seem to be working well and which ones maybe don't seem to be working well, and how do you get the ones that aren't working well to work better, or stop doing them and put the resources toward the ones that are working well or new programs we need. So as we thought about that, we thought, again, this was an opportunity to do some of that in the diversity area while keeping very strong focus on the goals of inclusive excellence, while continuing indeed to report on those in the accountability report, to make them an important part of the More Graduates program that we have at all the institutions, looking at how we improve retention and close the achievement gap. So let me ask, I don't know, Mark or Vicki, who wants to address a little bit in more detail how we're doing that and some of the changes we're proposing.
I'll speak to it a little bit, but I will ask Vicki to chime in as well. She's been involved in this for a longer period of time than I have at the system level. One of the things that I think is important to realize, especially in the personnel changes within academic affairs, is that we're giving up about 7.5 FTE out of 40. So it's a 17% cut. One of the units in there that is taking a pretty big cut is the Institute for Race and Ethnicity. There are 4 positions there that happen to all be open at the moment. What we're also giving up an associate vice president's position. What we're going to do is reorganize all of academic affairs. We really don't have a choice. At a 17% cut in personnel and an AVP, one of our strategic leaders, we've got to reorganize the entire area. We have a unit within academic affairs for equity, diversity, and inclusivity led by Vicki Washington. That unit isn't going to go away. There's actually an opportunity here to increase what we can do in inclusive excellence, diversity and equity issues, and be able to move those to campuses more effectively. So we are going to refocus. It looks like we're giving up positions. Those were the open positions we could give away, but we've got to reorganize our entire unit and put the emphasis where we have to have it, especially with the restructuring around program review changing, some of these other units being transferred out to campuses. Changes in our grants process will mean that we'll have fewer people overseeing grants as well. So we'll have some flexibility in how we reorganize this unit.
Good. Let's hear from Vicki.
She's right here, Mike.
Good.
Thank you, Regent, President
Spector.
How
soon they forget.
All of the above. The changes that I think that Mark well described what we plan to do in terms of our efforts of inclusive excellence. And if you recall, moving out of Plan 2008, we became well aware of the fact that much of the work had kind of existed on the margins of institutional operations and academic success for students. And so the aim of inclusive excellence is really to facilitate a more comprehensive, thorough approach to this work at the institutions to get many more people involved in understanding what's required for many more students to succeed, particularly students that may be from families or backgrounds that have had limited access to higher educational opportunities, to students and families that maybe come from schools that haven't really provided them with the requisite academic rigor to help them be well prepared for entrance into our institutions. And so we are refocusing our efforts and with the purpose of I would say, those of us at system to have a comprehensive approach to this work as well. I mean, we recognize and we clearly heard from the institutions that we have too many, in their way of thinking and experiencing it, too many disparate initiatives that we at system had commonly thought about were leading to the same ends. So the inclusive excellence is really focused on the strategic work that we need to do to accomplish the goals of diversity and inclusion, and we hope to integrate that into the institution's work around more graduates, because the two are inextricably linked. We're not going to get to the ultimate aim of having more baccalaureate degree holders in the state unless we do a much better job of graduating students, ensuring that many more students have access to our high-demand majors, that they're successfully completing those majors, that we're preparing students for graduate and professional schools in much greater numbers. And so the aims of inclusive excellence are really designed to facilitate that work in a more cohesive and directed way at the institution.
Thank you. Jose is first.
As I was reading the report here, words that caught my attention were delegate greater responsibility, and then moving to the campus, and I'm hearing the same thing here. And also reflecting on Tom's Loftus comment about do we build the system according to the legislature's budget, or, which always makes me nervous when we're either being given lesser monies or lesser positions, but miraculously we wind up doing even more. And it makes me nervous, because then it really projects that we were overstaffed, or that we were over budgeted, or that we were whatever. So the question that that's going through my mind is, as I'm reading delegating greater responsibility, doing this, and how is that going? And I'm maybe talking more to the chancellors. How is this going to impact your day-to-day operations if in all of this, especially in this reduction plan, you wind up having to do more locally because it's not being done centrally? Maybe it's a question more of the chancellors.
Sure, it goes back to that roles of the chancellors in a way, but you're asking it specifically in the budget reduction context. Yes. Anybody want to comment? Dennis.
In many ways, this issue has to be dealt with at the campus level. If you're going to effectively recruit students, if you're going to effectively incorporate them into your campus, if you're going to get the outcomes, higher graduation rates, retention, this is a very campus and labor-intensive process. So it's probably as it should be, with the broader policy goals coming from above. I don't know how you do more with less. I don't.
Yeah. But again, it makes me nervous, especially, Vicki, and I want to compliment you for the sacrifices in a way that you're going to be going through, but also, again, those statements that we're going to serve more, we're going to do more. It just...
Well, I do want to underscore what Chancellor Shields said. I mean, there's no way that at a system level we can really impact the daily lives of students in that arena. We could really work with and collaborate with our institutions and try to provide them the best resources, the best research, the best knowledge around practices to support them in their efforts to do that. With respect to the Institute on Race and Ethnicity, historically much of their work had been focused on, I would say, grant-making, support for faculty in the area of race and ethnic studies, and also conferences. So we had already absorbed a lot of that work as the staff in that office retired. Our initial hope was to redirect the activities of that office in a wholly new direction, and really looking at kind of structural issues that block success, thinking about how to impact K-12 in a different way, how to really look at the community infrastructure. So we're not going to be able to do that now. Suffice it to say, we have more than enough work to do in working with our institutions around integrating practice and policy areas with respect to more graduate and inclusive excellence, which remain system-wide priorities.
Judy and then Jeff.
I think this is a good example of an area that this board has felt put a great priority, the inclusive excellence, and I have no doubt that the board is going to continue to think that that's absolutely fundamental to what we do. But this is the kind of thing we're going to have to keep track of, it seems to me. This is where we need to find ways to find out what it's doing. Because while I fully agree with the increased responsibility on the campus level, and it's absolutely true, obviously, that that's where things have to happen, and that's where the locus of the responsibility. Ultimately, partly by what we choose to emphasize, this board is responsible for how well we're doing in public higher education in an area like that. So that's the kind of thing that I think that we want to find ways to keep track of and to have constant communication about.
Jeff.
I want to get to the chancellors again, the chancellor's role, and one of the things that we heard in the committee, and I've heard before, the committee started deliberations, was that chancellors sort of felt that they needed a more direct input to the regents in their policy making and decision making. And the committee discussed mechanisms for doing that, for how chancellors could communicate their ideas to the regents without, and this isn't a derogatory term, without filtering it through the system. President Riley's response to the report includes new roles for the chancellors, take on new leadership roles, including serving on the president's cabinet, working directly with regents, and helping to shape UW system policy. The second of those I'm curious about, and I'd like to ask if there are any chancellors who have ideas in this area, working directly with regents. Is there a mechanism that can be used so that chancellors' viewpoints can be communicated directly to regents in connection with issues that we're going to be addressing?
Do we want to comment? Dick?
I guess I'd say part of the answer is Tom and I are serving on the committee with the Regent leadership and system leadership on Wednesday mornings. And so we're in the teleconference and we're talking about a variety of issues. So there's one way there's direct impact. We haven't had a chance to get back to our colleagues because we haven't met yet. But we've participated the last 2 weeks in that, and it really, we're listened to. We're hearing, and I think we're contributing to the kinds of discussions that are going on.
There's one example, Jeff.
One of the things that I've mentioned to people who have raised this issue is that we have, for the last, I don't know, since I've been on the board, had a system where regents are assigned to campuses to develop a relationship with the leadership, faculty, academic staff, students, community leaders on that campus, at least for 1 year. And I found it very helpful, and I think the campuses that I've been assigned as we called it buddy campuses or buddy regions, that doesn't add enough significance to the relationship. But I think the campuses have and the institutions have felt it very important too, and I don't know whether something like that could be more formalized, institutionalized, and made part of this communications system that we're talking about.
Let me comment on that just briefly. I have made my preliminary list of who I think should be buddies with whom, what. But I've held up on finishing it because I thought in this case it was very important that the new regents be appointed so they could participate in that. And I'm ever hopeful that the governor's office will add to Katie and Troy for us with 3 new people, as we told the governor yesterday. but I'd like to wait until they're here, hopefully it will be soon, to add them, or to have them participate in that. From my experiences with that, and from talking to people, I think it is a good mechanism for good dialogue back and forth, an opportunity to spend a day together or a portion of a day, and I think we should continue it. If the other chancellors, or all the chancellors, want to play off on that theme in some way, great. If you want to build that into something more than it is, I encourage you to do that. I don't think, again, one size necessarily would fit all, but I think it's a good idea. Tom?
I think the Regent buddy system is very helpful. It has allowed me to get to know some of the regents that I was having a hard time getting to meet or having dinner with or something like that. But I want to say one other thing that's separate from that, and that is that we already have, I think, a real advantage over some systems, that we have system leadership through Kevin and his senior people, and the regents, where there's this relationship where I can talk directly to you without feeling like Kevin's going to keep that from happening or think it's inappropriate. And the other way around. I think there's a significant amount of trust among the Board of Regents here and among the chancellors that we can do that, whereas that's not necessarily the case in other systems. So I think stating that as one of our priorities, to continue that ability to interact just candidly and openly, it will help. I think that's where it's going to happen, I think. But the buddy system is great, but we have this ability right now to interact and share information.
Wait 1 second. Rick had something. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I would agree that an idea might be to have campuses that want to, universities. We're not supposed to be campuses when we're proposing that we're a system of distinctive universities, colleges, and extension. Right, Chuck? I always have to touch Chuck's point. We're not some big oak tree with branches anymore. We're a wonderful forest.
Chuck is so distinctive, he's decided he's not going to sit with you guys anymore.
That's how distinctive he is over there. Right. But another idea is... My 2 minutes is up. Is to float some of the big, bold ideas we're thinking about on the campus and kind of outline what they are and ask what regents would like to be involved with, thinking those through more strategically and so on. So the buddy system's good, but there's something some of us are doing that some of you are more interested in others, and it's not necessarily the year you're buddies. So maybe we could
well, I would encourage the chancellors to... Kevin's been asking you to participate. You could ask us to participate, too, as you see fit.
In some of those,
I know Kevin will not...
I just wanted to quickly go back to Regent Vasquez and Crank's concern about, some of these positions being cut, and Vicki talking about, moving to the inclusive excellence framework. One of the things I think Regent Vasquez got a lot of us to think about, and this is not just true of Wisconsin, it's around the country, around the whole approach to the old diversity approach to things, we kept building these special units that were responsible for affecting change, and oftentimes they got marginalized or they're on the fringe. They weren't really throughout the heart of the institution. And so it can happen when you do things like that, whether it's for diversity or retention, recruitment of students and so on the people in the rest of the institution, the majority of them, don't think that's not my responsibility. There's a unit that does that. So part of what you're trying to break down, that's one of the big revolutionary ideas about inclusive excellence. No, it's everybody's responsibility. So you may have to do something differently as a faculty or academic staff member, as a chancellor, that you did previously, but it wasn't as important as being involved in more in inclusive excellence or in recruitment and retention of students. So that's a way of having a greater efficiency, I think, by hopefully then more effectively meeting the goal. Because I think the frustration is, it's not just in Wisconsin, we're not really meeting that goal at the level we should be. And that, in large part, the simple idea is because everyone's not embracing it. So how do we create that embracing of it throughout the university and throughout the community? So Rachel Roeder, for example, in Student Affairs, is doing a number of things that builds into everybody's job expectation that they have a responsibility around the inclusive excellence initiatives and agenda, and will be evaluated that way. And ultimately, all of us should build that type of thing. And so that's one way the board can hold us accountable, show us how you are transforming the way you go at these things. And so we could talk about ways of reporting back on that that could hold us more accountable, and I think that'll work better. So that's just, but that could be applied to other things as well.
Thank you. Brian? Sorry, I'm trying to...
Thank you. Back to the Regent Buddy idea. First of all, I've been very appreciative when we've had major initiatives on our campus of the accessibility of the Regents for us to come around and meet with you in your hometown and make time for us. And I think that's important. We don't want to lose that. And we also don't want to take up all your time as individuals. But the other thing we do when the Regent Buddies visit campus, and those of you who have come to our campus, I'm sure my colleagues do it as well, is we have you meet with our faculty leadership, we have you meet with our student leadership, and we're not in the room when you meet with them. And I think when you have one board for 14 institutions, there can be a distance created, not intentionally, but simply by the volume of work you do. And I think that personalizes the relationship a little more. I think that helps to build some trust, that people can be open in a closed room with you there, and they know the Regents are hearing that message.
Good. Mike, then Jose.
I remember when Brian did come to see me, he showed up late. His shirt was all dirty, his hands were filthy, and I'm thinking, what is going on here? And then he announced, I'm sorry I'm late, I had a flat tire. At least that was his story. I come to realize, unlike Tom Loftus' legacy of pause, that my legacy is going to be correcting myself, and I'm not very proud of that. But I want to at least correct maybe an interpretation. But I wasn't trying to say earlier that the system wasn't important. I was trying to say that what the system is value added, and manufacturing value added is a very important thing. So if we feel that the universities and colleges are great on their own, the added value of the system is to make us greater. And I think our system does do that. So if anybody at the system interpreted me saying something else, I apologize. And I also think that, again, if we have the confidence that things are being done right, and if we can get out of the way a little bit and still have the confidence that our responsibilities are being carried out, we will allow for more efficiencies at the campus level in this time of cuts, and at the system level in this time of cuts. So I think it's something we have to do. Having said that, there's a limit. You can't save yourself into success. And at some point in time, we're going to start getting to the core of what we need and have to get our jobs done. And I'm very leery and very worried about that.
All right, Jose, I'm going to give you the last word, and then we're going to vote.
Thank you. Following up on the issue of the buddy campuses, and maybe also following up a little bit on Mike, I'm very much in support of it. But what I think that one of the strengths of our structure, and particularly as it pertains to the appointments of the Board of Regents, is that we're not appointed in, going back also reflecting on what Tony mentioned about why when Milwaukee School District has attempted decentralization, I think that some of the reasons why that happened, having lived or living in Milwaukee, is that the Board of Directors were coming to the board both from a regional perspective as well as also with very specific individual agendas that they wanted to accomplish. I want to accomplish a particular reading program, or I want to make sure that you don't cut positions, or that this and that. And so there was a lot of parochialism on that board that I think worked against the idea of decentralization and allowing things to happen. And I think that's one of the strengths that we have here as a Board of Regents, is that I hope and I do believe that none of us are approaching this either on a very parochial, I've got to protect my district or my campus, or I've got a very specific purpose that I'm here to accomplish on the board, but that our focus is really the state of Wisconsin, the system, and I think that's the strength. So while I am very much in support of the buddy concept, and I hope we continue it and even strengthen it, that it doesn't then lead unintentionally to a regionalization or a parochialism, that then we have a different set of mechanisms working on the board.
For your caution is well taken. We discussed it yesterday with Katie and Troy when we had the orientation session. And Mark, sorry. It's twice. And I feel strongly, based on experience, that we can strike a fair balance between the individual schools and the state as a whole. And I think we've worked hard at that this year, and I think we'll continue to do that. But being aware of it, like some of the other cautions that were given as we have gone along here, is always useful to have in mind. So with that in mind, I would welcome a resolution, first of all, 11F, and I will read you what I hope somebody moves, that the Board of Regents endorses President Riley's response to the report of the President's Advisory Committee on the roles of UW System Administration and expresses strong support for the policy changes and actions outlined in the response.
I'll move that.
Chuck moved it. Jeff seconded it. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Thank you. Second of all, Resolution 1.2.F. I'll read that one. That upon the recommendation of the President of the University of Wisconsin System, the Board of Regents approves the University of Wisconsin System Administration 2011-13 Budget Reduction Plan and the President's submission of the plan to the Secretary of the Department of Administration and to the Joint Finance Committee of the Wisconsin Legislature on or before September 15, 2011. Would somebody please move that?
So moved.
Danae?
Second.
Second. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Thank you very much. We are going to take a recess. Oh, yep.
I just wanted, President Spector, to say this. We've been through a rough spring. It took some tough sledding, I think, for the hard work for the committee to produce this report, working together, some hard work in system administration, figuring out with the chancellors how best to respond to it. And I just want to compliment the chancellors and their leadership at the institutions for the way they came at this, the system administration staff for the way they did, and now this Board of Regents for the vote of confidence you've given us. I think we're in the right place now to go forward in the right direction, and we look forward to working together with you to do just that and to having your input as we take this evolutionary but transformative change forward. So thank you all very much.
Great. We will come back at 20 after 12, and we will start with the honoring of our departing regent, Ms. Davis. Thank you.